spout. In fact, however, Lord Krishna has not so far told us what this action is that men are required to do. He has so far elaborated only its characteristics, what the gains from it are, and the precautions that have to be observed in the course of its performance. Yet the question of what exactly selfless action is has so far remained unanswered. It is, in fact, answered only in chapters 3 and 4. Lord Krishna again reverts to what he has already said. 48. The equipoise of mind that arises from profound absorption in the performance of action after renouncing attachment and being even-minded in respect of success and failure is, O Dhananjay, Arjun, given the name of Yog. Uizima. Yoga. 72. Yatharth Gita. Resting in Yog, renouncing infatuation for worldly ties, and looking at success and failure with an equal mind, Arjun should undertake action. But what action? Lord Krishna's pronouncement is that men should do selfless action. Equipoise of mind is what is called Yog. The mind in which there is no unevenness is full of equanimity. Greed destroys its evenness, attachments make it unequal, and desire for the fruits of action destroy its serenity. That is why there should be no hankering after the fruits of action. At the same time, however, there should also be no diminishing of faith in the performance of action. Renouncing attachment to all things, seen as well as unseen, and giving up all concern about achievement and non-achievement, we should only keep our eyes fixed on Yog, the discipline that joins the individual soul with the Supreme Spirit, and lead a life of strenuous action. Yog is thus the state of culmination. But it is also the initial stage. At the outset our eyes should be fixed on the goal. It is for this reason that we should act keeping our eyes on Yog. Equanimity of mind is also named Yog. When the mind cannot be shaken by failure and success, and nothing can destroy its evenness, it is said to be in the state of Yog. It cannot then be moved by passion. Such a state of mind enables the soul to identify himself with God. This is another reason why this state is called Samatva Yog, the discipline that makes the mind filled with equanimity. Since there is, in such a state of mind, complete renunciation of desire, it is also called the way of selfless action, Nishkam Karma Yog. Since it requires us to perform action, it is also known as the way of action, Karma Yog. Since it unites the self with the Supreme Spirit, it is called Yog. It is necessary to keep in mind that both success and failure should be viewed with equanimity, that there should be no sense of attachment, and that there is no desire for the rewards of action. It is thus that the way of selfless action and the way of knowledge are the same. Chapter 2, 49. Take refuge in the way of equanimity, Yog Dhananjay, because action with desire for the fruits thereof is far inferior to the path of discrimination, and they are indeed paupers who are motivated by lust for rewards. Covetous action is distant from and inferior to the path of discrimination. Those who yearn after praise are wretched men, vile and devoid of judgment. Arjun is, therefore, urged to find shelter in the even-minded way of knowledge. Even if the soul is rewarded with what he desires, he will have to assume a body in order to enjoy it. So long as the process of coming and going, of birth and death, lasts, how can there be ultimate redemption? A seeker should not desire even absolution, for absolution is total freedom from passions. Thinking over the acquisition of rewards if he gets any, his worship is interrupted. Why should he now continue any further with the task of meditation on God? He goes astray. So yog should be observed with a perfectly even mind. Lord Krishna describes the way of knowledge, Jnana Karma Sannyas Yog, as also the Buddhi or Sankhya Yog. He suggests to Arjuna that he has attempted to enlighten him on the nature of discrimination, in its relation to the way of knowledge. In truth, the only difference between the two is that of attitude. In the one has to proceed only after making a proper examination of the constructive and negative aspects of the undertaking, while in the other, equanimity has to be preserved. So it is also called the way of equanimity and discrimination, Samatva Buddhi Yog. Because of this and because men possessed of desire for rewards are reduced to miserable wretchedness, Arjuna is advised to find shelter in the way of knowledge. Otish Chase Yug 70 Yatharth Gita 50. As the soul endowed with a mind of equanimity renounces both meritorious and evil deeds in this world itself and the art of acting with equipoise as yog, the endeavor to master the way of equanimity of discrimination is samatva yog. Stoic minds give up both the sacred and the sinful in this life itself. They adopt an attitude of detachment to both. So Arjuna should strive for the equanimity of mind that is derived from the way of knowledge. Yog is the skill of acting with equipoise. Two attitudes towards action prevail in the world. If people do a work, they also wish for its fruits. If there are no rewards, they may not even like to work. But Yogeshwar Krishna regards such action as bondage and states that worship of the one God is the only worthwhile action. In the present chapter he has only named action. Its definition is given in the 9th verse of chapter 3, and its nature is dwelt upon at length in chapter 4. In the verse about to be quoted, the skill of acting in freedom from worldly customs is that we should perform action and do it with dedication, but at the same time with voluntary renunciation of any right to its fruits. However, it is but natural to be curious about what will become of these fruits. But, of course, there is no doubt that selfless action is the right way of action. The whole energy of the desireless worshipper is then directed to his action. The human body is meant for worship of God. At the same time, though, one would like to know whether one has just always to go on acting or whether the performed action will also produce some result. Lord Krishna now dwells upon this problem. 51. Renouncing all desire for the fruits of their action and, thus, freed from the bondage of birth, wise men who are skilled in Yegafai Lemciis Buddhi Chapter 2, 75. The way of equanimity and discrimination achieve the pure, immortal state. Wise men endowed with the yog of discrimination renounce the fruits arising from their action and are liberated from the bondage of birth and death. They achieve the pure, immortal state of oneness with God. Application of intellect is categorized here into three kinds. Firstly, by the way of discrimination, in verse 39, this yields two results: divine riches and ultimate bliss. Secondly, by the way of selfless action, in verse 51, which produces only one consequence: liberation from the dire terror of repeated birth and death by attaining immaculate indestructible oneness with God. These are the only two ways described for the yog. The third type of application of intellect is done by the ignorant who are engaged in other endless modes of actions and who fall into the cycles of repeated birth and death according to their deeds. Arjan's vision is limited only to acquisition of sovereignty over the three worlds and even over gods. But even for the sake of these he is not inclined to war. At this point, Lord Krishna reveals to him the truth that a man can attain to the immortal state through selfless action. The way of selfless action also provides access to the state of being which death cannot break into. At what point, though, will a man be inclined to the performance of such action? 52. At the time when your mind has successfully made its way across the swamp of attachment, you will be capable of the renunciation which is worth hearing of and which you have heard. The very moment Arjan's mind, indeed the mind of any worshipper, has steered safely across the marsh of attachment, and when it is completely free from yearning for either children or riches or honor, all Uoi less li ya 76. Its worldly ties are broken. It will then be receptive, not only to what is proper for hearing, but also to the idea of renunciation, making it an integral part of its action according to what it has learnt. At the present moment, however, Arjan is unprepared to listen to what is proper for hearing, and so the question of its influencing his conduct, of course, simply does not arise. Lord Krishna again illumines the same worthiness. 53. When your mind, now shaken by the conflicting precepts of the Ved, achieves a changeless and constant existence within the being of Supreme Spirit, you will then attain to a mortal state through profound meditation. When Arjan's mind, at present riven through and through by the contradictory teachings of the Ved 5, achieves the state of steady contemplation of God, it will become changeless and constant, and then he will master the skill of even-minded discrimination. He will then achieve the perfect equilibrium which is the ultimate state of immortality. This is the crowning point of Yog. The Ved undoubtedly instruct us, but as Lord Krishna points out, the contradictory injunctions of the Shruti confuse the mind. Precepts there are many, but it is unfortunate that people usually keep away from the knowledge that is fit for learning. Arjan is told that he will reach the stage of immortality, the culmination of Yog, when his agitated mind achieves constancy by meditation. This naturally whets Arjan's curiosity about the nature of sages who exist in an exalted state of perfect spiritual bliss, and whose minds are immovable and at peace in the state of abstract meditation. So he asks Lord Krishna, Sajflifyewifal Iruta 5. The first part of the Ved, known as works, Shruti, the Ved known by revelation, and chiefly made up of hymns and instructions regarding sacred rites and ceremonies. The second part, known as knowledge, Smriti, is made up of the Upanishad that are concerned with awareness of God, the highest aspect of sacred truth. Chapter 2, 77.